Imagine you walk into a mall the size of a small city. There's a Venetian canal running 2 kilometers through the center, a replica Arc de Triomphe standing at the entrance, an indoor roller coaster frozen mid-loop above your head, space for over 2,000 stores, and almost no one here. No music, no crowd noise, no shopping bags rustling, just the distant hum of lights above empty corridors that stretch so far into the distance you genuinely cannot see the end of them. You are not in a post-apocalyptic movie set. You are in China in 2025, in what was once the largest shopping mall on Earth. And this place, this billion-dollar monument to ambition, has been empty for most of its existence. Now multiply this by thousands, because this is not a single story about one bad investment. This is the story of how China built more shopping malls than any nation in history, and how that decision is now costing the country trillions of dollars, hollowing out its cities, and revealing a crack running through the heart of the world's second largest economy. By the time this video ends, you will never look at a shopping mall the same way again. China built the world's biggest malls. Now they're losing trillions. Act 1. The dream. To understand how China ended up with the most ghost malls on Earth, you have to go back to the beginning, to a moment when anything seemed possible. In the year 2000, China was transforming at a speed the world had never seen. Hundreds of millions of people were moving from rural villages into cities. Incomes were rising. A new middle class was being born. And the government had a simple, powerful idea. Build infrastructure faster than the demand, and the people will come. It worked spectacularly for roads, bridges, airports, and entire cities built from nothing. So why not malls? The man who bet everything on that idea was a noodle tycoon named Hu Guirong. Born and raised in Dongguan, a factory city in southern China's Pearl River Delta, Hu had made his fortune selling instant noodles. But he had a bigger vision. He wanted to put his hometown on the map. He wanted to build something the world had never seen. His mall would feature themed zones replicating global landmarks, the Arc de Triomphe, Venice canals complete with gondolas, a full indoor roller coaster looping above the walkways, space for 2,350 stores, a waterway stretching the length of the complex, more than twice the size of the Mall of America. The cost? An estimated $1.3 billion. On paper, the logic made sense. Dongguan sat at the center of one of the richest manufacturing corridors on Earth, nestled between Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Macau. Factories meant jobs. Jobs meant paychecks. Paychecks meant shopping. Hu Guirong opened the South China Mall in 2005 with enormous fanfare. And then, nothing. The South China Mall was built on former farmland, approximately 34 miles from Dongguan city center, with no direct public transport links. The surrounding population? Primarily migrant factory workers, people on tight wages, not luxury shoppers. The city of Dongguan was full of factory workers and low-income families, not the wealthy consumers the mall was designed to attract. Major retailers looked at the location, looked at the demographics, and walked away. Without anchor tenants, the big names that draw foot traffic, smaller businesses refused to open. Without small businesses, there was nothing to see. Without anything to see, shoppers didn't come. And without shoppers, more retailers pulled out. A death spiral before it even started. By 2011, less than 1% of the mall was occupied. The world's largest shopping mall had become the world's emptiest shopping mall. But here's what's remarkable. The South China Mall was not an isolated mistake. It was a preview. Act 2. The machine. While the South China Mall was rotting in Dongguan, something extraordinary was happening across the rest of China. They were building more malls, thousands more. Between 2005 and 2015, China went on the most aggressive retail construction spree in human history. And the engine driving it was not consumer demand. It was something far more powerful and far more dangerous. It was the system. Here's how it worked. In China, local governments don't collect much income tax. Their primary source of revenue is land sales, selling plots to developers. The more land they sell, the more money they make. So governments had a direct financial incentive to keep building. But it went further than that. Local governments, driven by land revenue and tax incentives, mandated that commercial facilities, malls, be attached to land development projects. You want to build apartments? Fine, but you also have to build a mall on the ground floor. Developers complied, not because they believed in the malls, but because they had no choice. The malls were never the point. They were the price of admission to build the apartments, the real moneymaker. So mall after mall was built, not because anyone had studied the local demographics or the consumer base or the competition, but because the system required it. And by the time anyone noticed the problem, the scale was incomprehensible. By the end of 2024, China had nearly 7,000 shopping malls with an area of over 30,000 square meters, more than 6 times the number in the United States, a country with only a quarter of China's population, but a higher GDP per capita. Read that again. 6 times the number of malls, 1/4 of the purchasing power per person. The mismatch between supply and demand was not just a problem, it was a catastrophe waiting to happen. But not every mall failed quietly. Some failed spectacularly, by succeeding first. In 2013, China opened what it called the greatest building ever constructed by human hands, the New Century Global Center in Chengdu, with 1.7 million square meters, became the largest building in the world by floor area. At 500 meters long, 400 meters wide, and 100 meters high, massive enough to hold 20 Sydney opera houses or 3 Pentagons. A cinema complex, hundreds of restaurants and shops, even a faux Mediterranean village, following the bizarre Chinese trend for copycat European towns. International Business Times. It was not a mall. It was an indoor world. And Chengdu was not the exception. It was the template. Across China's Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, Wuhan, Chongqing, Zhengzhou, Kunming, local governments were in a race to build the biggest, the tallest, the most spectacular. Every city wanted its own landmark, its own statement, its own proof that it had arrived. The problem? In 2013 alone, companies in Chengdu were completing 2.9 million square meters of mall space, more new retail space than 89 Western European cities combined. One city, more retail space than most of a continent. And then something happened that no one in a government planning office had prepared for. The internet arrived. Act 3. The collapse. China did not just adopt e-commerce, it pioneered it. It perfected it. It took it to a level the West has still not matched. By the mid-2010s, Chinese consumers could order almost anything: clothes, electronics, groceries, furniture, and have it delivered within hours. Super apps like WeChat blurred the line between social media, messaging, and shopping into one seamless experience. Platforms like Pinduoduo turned group buying into entertainment. Shopping became a social game you played from your sofa. Why would you fight traffic to a mall, struggle to find parking, and pay full price when you could buy the same thing cheaper, faster, without leaving your home? The malls had been built for a consumer that no longer needed them. In 2024 alone, more than 40 malls closed out of over 6,000 operating nationwide, most of which had been in operation for a decade or more. The world of Chinese. And those were just the ones that fully closed. Data from Cushman & Wakefield shows China's national average vacancy rate for prime retail properties across 15 major cities reached 11.1% in the second quarter of 2025. 30 of China's 35 first and second tier cities reported declines in retail rent prices during the first half of 2025, with 8 cities facing declines exceeding 10%. Guangzhou recorded the steepest fall, over 15%. And this wasn't happening in struggling rural outposts. It was happening in the heart of China's most iconic cities. In Shanghai, legendary names like Pacific Department Store in Xuhui, after 30 years of operation, and Meilong Isetan, after 27 years, had to close due to prolonged losses. In Beijing, Parkson in Fuxingmen, an icon for over 3 decades, accepted a contract breach worth millions of yuan just to escape its lease. In a city of 24.8 million, the streets are empty, the malls are empty, the scenic spots are empty, the restaurants, the barbershops, even the markets, they're all empty. Those words came from a Shanghai resident in late 2025. Shanghai, one of the wealthiest cities on Earth. Because it's not just about e-commerce. Something deeper has broken. China is facing a consumer confidence crisis unlike anything it has seen in the modern era. Young people, the demographic that should be filling these malls, are choosing not to spend. They're watching the job market tighten. They're seeing property values fall. They're looking at the cost of raising a child in a major city and choosing not to have children at all. In these malls, all the brands and stores look the same. People come once and never return. The world of Chinese. They built 1,000 versions of the same mall, and they wondered why no one came back. China's shop rents have slid back to 2018 levels. with analysts expecting the pressure to persist for another 1 to 2 years. 7 years of retail growth. Act 4. The Reckoning. So what does the bill look like? The losses from China's retail property collapse don't arrive in a single headline. They accumulate across tens of thousands of individual businesses, developers, local governments, and ordinary families who invested their savings into commercial property that no longer functions. Goldman Sachs estimates it would take $1.1 trillion just to address the broader real estate crisis, of which the commercial mall glut is a significant part. That is more than 25 times the government's current rescue commitment. And the losses ripple outward. When a mall empties, the surrounding businesses close. When businesses close, workers lose jobs. When workers lose jobs, they stop spending. When consumers stop spending, more malls empty. The cycle feeds itself. The collapse of China's mall economy is rooted in decisions made during the boom years. Years of unregulated expansion driven by short-term profit motives and real estate speculation, now colliding with economic contraction and a lack of consumer resilience. The Chinese government has not been blind to this. They have launched stimulus packages. They have encouraged developers to convert vacant commercial space into affordable housing. They have tried to boost consumer confidence through spending incentives. But there is a fundamental problem no stimulus can fix overnight. With newer malls siphoning traffic from older ones, a glut of shopping centers disconnected from actual market demand, and a shrinking consumer base with weakened investor confidence, there is no new viable profit model in sight. Many malls have devolved into food court-only complexes. Stratnews Global reports the grand retail empires stripped down to their last surviving function, a place to eat. Because people still need to eat. Everything else, they buy online. Closing. The South China Mall is still standing. It has undergone renovations. It has drawn some new tenants, restaurants, budget retailers, local shops. The strategy shifted from attracting luxury brands to targeting the actual local population, middle-income shoppers and families. It is not dead, but it is a shadow of what it was supposed to be. And in a way, it is the perfect metaphor for the entire era. China built malls not because the data said to. It built them because ambition demanded it. Because local officials needed to show progress, because developers needed to unlock land deals, because the system rewarded construction, not consumption. And for a decade, the momentum was so strong that no one stopped to ask the obvious question: who is actually going to shop here? The answer, it turned out, was fewer people than anyone planned for, in a country changing faster than its builders could keep up with, where a generation raised in prosperity chose their phones over the mall, where property values fell, wages stagnated, and young people tightened their grip on savings no one could guarantee they'd keep. The malls were built for a future that arrived differently than expected. And now, across China, in empty atriums, in darkened food courts, in corridors that echo with footsteps that never come, the bill is being paid. If you want to understand what happens when a country builds faster than it can consume, when ambition outpaces reality, you don't need to read an economics textbook. You just need to walk through one of China's ghost malls.